Hey guys, this week we are diving into a message in our trending collection. Why is it called that? Because in this collection, we talk about topics that are trending in the lives of middle schoolers. These are things that are making an impact on your life or in the world. Today's topic might seem like it doesn't have much to do with our faith, but in fact, it is very much tied to the way that we follow Jesus. I've got a question for you that I want you to think about. If I were to hand you $1 million right now, what would you do with it? Because there are so many options. Like, you could buy so much cool stuff. You could make a big donation. You could take incredible trips. Well, in case you haven't figured it out already, today we are talking about money. But unfortunately, we're not just talking about the way we would love to use our millions if we had them. We're actually going to talk about something else that's pretty important when it comes to money. Now, maybe you're thinking, come out, I'm in middle school, don't have a job. Therefore, I am completely dependent on my parents for money, so why are we talking about this? And I can appreciate why you would ask that. Well, when it comes to money, you may not have a lot of control over acquiring money as a middle schooler, but you are certainly aware of how it affects your life. Maybe your family has a lot of money. Maybe they don't. Maybe you feel the struggle around money in your home because your family can't afford the things that you need to get by. Or maybe that's a struggle you've never had. Maybe you've never really talked about money with anyone before, so you're not even sure if that's like a polite, okay thing to do. Maybe you see your favorite athletes and influencers making so much money, and you're like, yes, please, I want that someday. Maybe you just really, really wish you had more of it. And I think lots of us can relate to that. The point is this: money is a real part of our lives. It has an impact on so much of the way that we live. And because of that, we think it's important to talk about it and to have wisdom about how we think about money. I think for a lot of us, money isn't something that we talk about every day. But even if we're not talking about it, it is definitely something that we are thinking about. I think when it comes to money, all of us have some kind of awareness of what we think it means to have money. Think about the influencers that you follow on TikTok or on Instagram. They're young, they're cool, and what do they all probably have in common? They're young, cool, and rich, and they're making a lot of money with every post, and we know it. And they show it in the way that they dress, the places they live, the things they buy, the vacations they take. And I think a lot of us watch that and we'd admit there are times we wish our lives looked a little more like that. I know I've wished that before. If I had more money like them, I could take cool trips, I could buy cool stuff, and I just wouldn't have the stress of like having to worry about money stuff. A lot of us are tempted to see money as an answer to the things that we want in life. We think if I just have enough money, I can get that next cool thing and then I'll be happy. But the thing that I'm learning is that there's always going to be the next cool thing. That cycle doesn't end. The more we get, the more we want. Looking at money that way creates an appetite or a desire for more and more and more. And the reality is we're never going to be satisfied with what we have because the appetite for more never goes away. And it ultimately leads to a lot of disappointment and frustration. Now, maybe you think about money in a different way. You feel like you don't have much control over it when it comes to money. You don't work, so you don't make your own money, and you can't control how your parents spend it or even what they make. You can't make decisions about how the money in your life is spent because it's not yours, it's your parents. So you think if you had more money, you'd have more freedom. Maybe in the middle of a global pandemic, you've suddenly been more aware of money than ever before. Maybe you're experiencing a lack or a loss that you didn't have before, particularly if your parent was one of the many people who lost their job. We particularly tend to spend a lot of time thinking or talking about money when we don't feel like we have enough. Have you ever noticed how money has the ability to bring out a lot of thoughts and judgments about others that aren't necessarily true? If we see someone with a lot of money, we can start to think about things about how they must be selfish and spoiled and entitled and arrogant, that they take everything for granted and they don't appreciate anything. And if we see someone that's homeless, out on the streets, or maybe they do have a place to stay, but they're struggling for money, we might find ourselves saying that they must be an addict or they've made dumb life choices to put themselves in that financial situation. So, hey, well, that's tough. No one wants that, right? But it's probably their own fault. You see, money has a way of bringing out a lot of ugly judgment in our hearts. No matter how you feel about money or what your status with it is, here's what I want you to know. Money isn't bad. In fact, money does matter. It can solve a lot of problems in the world. Money can actually fix some of the things in your life. It can give you a roof over your head, a meal on your table. It can help you to feel safe and taken care of in your home. And those are important things. Money itself isn't a problem. It's the heart or the attitude that we can have toward money that can lead to problems. Our attitude toward money matters. It matters more than the amount of money that we have, because the attitude affects what we do with it and how we think about it. It affects the way we live, and that's why no matter how much of it or how little we have, my hope for you today is that we'll be able to change our hearts toward money. The good news is that people have been talking about attitudes towards money for a really long time, and I think we can learn from their experience. About 2,000 years ago, a guy named Paul wrote a letter to his friend Timothy. Now, Paul was a little older and wiser than Timothy, so he often wrote down important things that he wanted his younger friend to know. Here, he's writing to Timothy about money. Take a look at the first part of what Paul says to Timothy. You can find this in 1 Timothy chapter 6 in your Bibles. He says, "For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil." Paul is trying to say here that money isn't bad. It isn't what brings us problems or frustration or anger or judgment. As Paul put it, it is the love of money that can lead us to all kinds of evil. And that's the problem. If we aren't paying attention, our love or want for money can influence us to do things we wouldn't normally do. Things like lying or manipulating other people to get what we want, or taking what isn't ours, or staying in bad relationships, or refusing to share what we have, or saying yes to things that we know are not good for us, or acting out of anger or frustration because we don't have what we need. You see, our heart towards money can cause lots of problems. Take a look at what Paul says next. He says, "And some people, craving money, have wandered from true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows." You can find that in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. What Paul meant here is that if you crave or love money, you'll never feel like you have enough. And sometimes when we find ourselves really focused on something we want, like money, we run the risk of letting it affect every area of our life, and that includes our faith. We might even find ourselves looking to money to meet the needs that Jesus wants to fill in our lives. We sometimes use money to provide us with things that Jesus already promises to give us. You see, sometimes we go looking for the things that money can buy to fill longings that we have in our heart. For example, we each have a deep desire to belong. How many clothes, iPhones, game systems do we buy so that we feel like we belong? But that's the issue. If you're relying on buying things to have a sense of belonging, then whether or not you experience belonging is totally dependent upon what you have. Similarly, we all want to be liked and to have the attention of others. We don't need cool stuff to be liked and loved by God, though. Our deep desire to be a priority to others won't be satisfied by having the coolest vacation pictures. And deep down, we know that. Sometimes putting too much emphasis on money leads us to think that we don't really need God as long as we've got enough money. But in our heart of hearts, we know this isn't true. We can observe plenty of wealthy people in our world that are pretty miserable. We also can observe that there are plenty of people that don't have much money that seem really content and at peace in life. If we're not careful, we start giving money more credit than it's worth. We start thinking that money can satisfy us in ways that it can't. So is it wrong to want stuff, to look forward to being able to buy cool shoes or finally get a new phone or take that trip? No, it's not wrong to want those things. There's nothing wrong with wanting stuff like that. But we need to be careful to not let our attitude towards money become something we want more than anything else in our lives. Jesus promises and gives us so many good things, and we don't want to miss those things because we're looking for them somewhere else. So what do we do? What attitude are we supposed to have? Well, let's take a look at something that Jesus shared with his followers to give us some guidance. He said, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. And where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." That's Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 to 21. Jesus was telling us that the things we value and think are important are our treasures. They're what we focus a lot of our energy on. The things we treasure impact things like who we are, what we do, and what we want. If we make money and material things our treasure, that's what we'll focus on in our lives. That's what will be important to us. It'll be where our heart is. But here's the thing, money and what it can buy may seem valuable now, but these things are temporary. They don't last beyond our lifetime on earth. But when we focus on and treasure things that last forever, our hearts will be in the right place. So what are these things that last forever? Well, they're the good things in God's kingdom here on earth that have an impact in heaven. They're the things that God values and really cares about. We have to remind ourselves what those things are. Sometimes money is needed to invest our hearts into things that God cares about. Things like using our money to help people in need, but other times they're not material things. The things that are forever are things that money can't always buy. They're things like having a relationship with God, showing love to the people around us, being kind and compassionate to our fellow human beings, respecting those who are different from us, being generous with what we have, meeting the needs of other people, having faith that God will take care of us, using our words to build others up, trying to live as God tells us to live. All of these things, these are the things that we should treasure in our lives. These are the things that we should focus our hearts and our minds on. And in fact, God calls us to invest all of our lives and resources, including our money, on those things. Because the truth is, those are the things that are eternal. Those are the things that last. Money is something that matters while we are here on earth, but there are other things that matter more. Things that God wants us to love and care about. See, money matters, but your attitude around it matters more. I encourage you to think about where you're putting your treasure. Are you putting your time, effort, energy, and focus into things of eternal value, or are you placing your joy in money? If you find yourself thinking that the key to joy and fulfillment in life is more money, then you may have put your treasure in the wrong place. I invite you to think differently about what you treasure and explore the things of eternal value.